Hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome to my overview of Starship Troopers Terran Command Urban Onslaught. We're looking at this DLC today. I've been playing it in pre-release for a couple of hours. DLC is a little bit tricky when it comes to sort of overviews, bit of required reading required, but you know, I've clocked through Terran Command. I'm a big fan. I looked at the last DLC. I figured we'd have a look at this one as well. For those not across it, when I do overviews, I just have a look at the first 2 hours of the game because it's the Steam refund window. I'm not really sure that applies to DLC, but that's an exception to the rule. But generally speaking, I've been quite impressed with what I've played so far. If you haven't played the core game, Terran Command, you should, especially if you're a Starship Troopers fan. It's really quite wonderful. It's a lot of fun. It's less of a base building and more of a skirmish only game. You call in troops, but you call them against essentially a point cap. So it's not resource management. It's not StarCraft. It's a lot closer to something like a Steel Division. Except much more in the traditional RTS way as opposed to humongous scale battles. It works quite well, and the micro is not super intense, but there's enough going on there. Anyway, I think the core game's quite wonderful. The first DLC was really interesting, doing sort of like an evil scientist lava planet sort of thing, and that was cool. This one is urban, as you might have guessed from the title. It's set on a city called Mahanagar. I think that's how you say it. And I'm enjoying this sort of, you know, I guess it's almost fan fiction. I don't know how canon this could really be. Who particularly cares? But it's cool watching them build out the extended world of Starship Troopers. So it's set in a cityscape, and it sort of vibes with like Judge Dredd, that sort of thing, where you've got a bit more of a police focus on this. Now, jury's still out on the main protagonists because they have narratives in there. They're fairly thin, but you'll have sort of protagonist characters. It's this Sheila, she's like a police officer, like a negotiator or something like that. But she's very much like, hey, we gotta save the civilians and all. Like, she kind of is at odds at everything that we've been taught about the kind of attitude, the heavy militarism focused attitude of Starship Troopers. However, we have seen that through the lens of the mobile infantry. So it's hard to tell because she's clearly a civilian and has civilian interests, and we're used to the citizen perspective, and I'm already up to a point where like this major has come in from the MI, and the two of them are sort of reluctantly working together, and you can see that they have overlap and clash in their kind of moral worldviews. I'm not trying to get too philosophical, but it's interesting because if you were going to have her be of the people outside the militaristic complex, you would expect them to have some sort of conflict, and that's happening already. Example being, she's trying to save every last civilian and evacuate them, that sort of thing, whereas the mobile infantry dude is like, I don't give a shit about them, I just want to kill all the bad guys, and they're sort of working through that together. It's good, it's nuanced enough, right? It's not Shakespearean or anything like that, but it is cool. I know I'm sort of spending a bit of time at the front on this, but I find that really interesting. We've got some new units straight away, some new bad guys, that sort of thing. A lot of this stuff, if it was retroactively applied to previous games, would kind of break it a bit. One example that really jumps out is you've got these like riot shield trooper police units, and essentially their Q ability, every unit has like a skill shot or an ability, and then when they level up to level 3 you can pick another one, but their standard ability is essentially a temporary invulnerability. They form one of those bloody Roman shield turtle things and sit still, and they can just tank just about anything, which kind of trivializes the gigantic flame bug dudes. Usually you have to micro around them. I wouldn't say trivialize, but like, it is definitely a hard ability counter. So if you've got them in the front line, which you're likely to do because of the way their ranges work, they will push up to the front when you're blobbing, because you blob a bit in this game. It's definitely aimed at people that like to blob. You hit that Q button and they'll just tank the shot. So it's cool. It's a little bit more Holy Trinity, you know, a bit more World of Warcraft in that way. But I also feel like, thinking back to the previous campaigns, if these dudes were in it, they would kind of break it. But it's also built around it as well. You've got these new enemies called bursters, and they essentially throw, God, I'm using my hands, like a mortar shot that has a timer explosion on it. It's very short as well. So as far as like a game design perspective and your micro, you have to recognize the enemies there and see that he's winding up the shot. If you're trying to move when it's landed, it's going to be too late because it's probably like a 1.5 second timer. So there's this kind of seeing a couple moves ahead micro introduced there. So My point is that they're keeping the game interesting and fresh. However, if for some strange reason, I don't know, maybe you really like the idea of the police Starship Troopers thing, if for some reason you've never played the main game, I would not suggest going into this first. The way that it is squeezing you with the micro, I've already bricked, I think, 2 missions. It's starting to become critical path. What I'm getting at is the game is clearly designed at people that have clocked the first game, clocked the second DLC, and they're hungry for more. It is that sort of DLC that you recognize from yesteryear. I know I use World of Warcraft as an example, but it's almost like ones where you've hit X level and this extends onto that. In a way, this is not the best way to experience this game fresh. And yeah, on that critical path thing, it is sort of getting that way because they're trying to kind of offer more of a difficulty, at least this is my supposition. The game is starting to really sort of squeeze you down a specific path, and it is becoming very much you need to do things in this sequence to beat this level. And again, I don't like that kind of gameplay design. However, I feel like it can be earned, like in this situation. You've earned my goodwill. I've probably put a couple dozen hours into this game, and playing this, I'm no newbie, and I think most people that this would appeal to would be in the same seat. But just be aware, it's not going to be just another cruisy couple of missions without really value adding. Not that the last DLC was like that at all. In fact, I would argue the last DLC did the same sort of thing. Squeeze you a bit harder, and this is doing the same again. But yeah, look, so far I'm enjoying it. A bit more story, a bit more peripheral world building. It doesn't seem super heavy-handed. Exploring some other sort of moral themes within the universe. A couple of new units, new setting. Look, it's everything that you could possibly want for it. So yeah, roundly, I'm quite impressed, and I'm going to have to find some time in my calendar to really chip away at it and try and get through the whole, 9 missions or something like that. Anyway, team, check it out if you're a fan. If you haven't played the first game, this is your, annual reminder to play the first game. There's a review on the channel somewhere. It's really good. Anyway, team, much as leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.